So I want to thank you all for coming to this discussion and meditation on the Sunchild working that I've been doing for the past, I'm not sure, several years. It's been going on now at this point, at least 3, possibly more. Initially, a number of things came to me as related to this kind of work. And a number of them have kind of not really ever become operational. So I thought I'd mention them to you, even though they may or may not be something that you're interested in doing. First of all, when the Sunchild meditation came to me, the way in which it was intended to be performed, I felt was a little bit much to ask of people, so I performed it myself that way, actually only once myself. But I'll describe to you what it is that I was presented with, which was that you were to, at sunset, face the dying sun on the solstice, and hold a candle so that before your eyes, between you and the sun, the candlelight was basically collecting the light of the sun. And then you were to keep that candle lit on your altar, and at midnight you were to perform the meditation that the recording, and then hold a night vigil for the evening, relighting the candle as needed if it went out, and then in the morning, as the sun rise, do the same thing, so that you're basically holding the light of the sun, performing the meditation and renewing that light, and then basically relighting the sun the next day. That, as I said, just knowing the group of people that I'm working with, I know a few of you at this point would probably be up for doing that, but at the time that the series was coming into my consciousness, I didn't feel like the folks that were around would be up for that. A few of them might have been, but it seemed too much and too intimidating, especially because I kind of wanted to ignite interest in doing the exercise, rather than forcing people to do a heavily ritualized and intense activity without preliminary work. So this is basically, I probably should have had this discussion last week, but this is basically something that, you could do it tonight as well if you wanted to, or even tomorrow night, or even on the 25th if you wanted to, on Christmas. But it's intended to be on the actual evening of the solstice, in that basically, let's take a step back here. And that was the other thing. Robin mentions that last night would have been awful at where she lived because of the fact that it was raining, and of course that's a risk. If the day that you're intending to do it is overcast, then you're not going to be able to have that magical experience. Well, the intention was for you to at least step outside to where you can watch the sunset and make it happen, and then in the morning do the same. But you wouldn't need to stay outside the whole evening, and in fact, that would make it very hard to. Because the worst possible scenario for you, magically speaking, would be for you to lose your, to go outside and collect the sunlight and hold the candle and have a wind just blow it out, and then you're, then what does that say about your magic for the year? But you could do it off solstice, just because, and the interesting thing is that the this time period between the solstice and Christmas is basically all the solstice. The length of the day doesn't significantly increase during this time period, so it's all kind of that little solstice time. So if you wanted to do it this evening or tomorrow evening, or I don't know if that's feasible for people, but it's all part of the seasonal transition. So, but let's talk for a second about what the solstice represents. It's the shortest day of the year, and the year in which basically the day in which the sun is at its weakest. Essentially, it's even though it's going to get colder the light of the sun is at its least intense at this time. So the ancients, viewed this as a time in which basically the old sun was dying and a new sun was being reborn. And we have a number of myths that hold on to that tradition from a number of different cultures. Most notably, of course, is our Christmas myth. But that one was actually intentionally adopted from earlier myths that also contain that same information, just simply because the early fathers of the church realized that was a time that people were already celebrating this sort of stuff, and so kind of grafted them together. There's Mithras is born at this time. There's a few other gods that are born at this time. I'm less clear on it today than I might have been a few years ago. Juan says Odin delivers gifts. So the idea of what my personal attitude towards the use of ritual and magic has always been to be loving to the world and to create a better world, but also to utilize these things in a practical way to direct our lives towards where we really want to go, towards the things that we actually want to create, the changes in the world that we'd like to see come about, and utilize our collective magical energy towards those ends. And so what I wanted to create was an energy chamber, an energy essence that we could all draw upon and utilize as a sort of an image, as a battery, as a conceptual, drawing off place for engaging the universal in our magical work without necessarily attaching it to any specific religion or to any specific spiritual tradition. Just a sort of a pure archetypal. This is that sort of essence of the yearly light energy, and we're just going to have this to pull upon. I also wanted to, and this is interesting because you guys were commenting on how much you enjoyed the sounds in the recording, I wanted to utilize the Sunchild meditation as a launching off point for all of the other meditations that use that same sonic technology, the path workings that we've been working on for the past several months, the angelic invocations. A lot of people say to me, well, I did the Sunchild operation, but I don't really know how to utilize the energy that was created there. And the thing is, what's really ultimately going on is that you're entering into the space of those different tones with which you're associating with your own energy that you're putting into the Sunchild battery. So essentially, listening to the Sunchild recordings and listening to the other three seasonal recordings is programming you to make those other audio theurgy programs, the angelic ones and the path workings and so forth, more effective, because you're programming that you're creating a symbiotic loop, and at the same time we're using universal archetypes so that you're also tapping into the more universal and ancient and essential mystery tradition, as well as doing something sort of modern and new. So people are writing things on here, so I'm just going to check out what people are saying here. Okay, I'm going to skip TV's joke there. Robin says, when I listened yesterday, I liked the idea of feeding into the energy as a community and drawing from the energy for personal use needs. Robin says, were the tones the same as the TOL we're using now. Yes, absolutely. It's the same stuff, and actually the Sunchild ones, I believe, if I remember correctly, were the very first time that I used those tones, and so they're basically all the tones that are in the later ones are the Sunchild tones just remixed into other things. Now, in the background of the Sunchild meditation is actually some invocations from various classical invocations of the planetary gods. So for there's Saturnian ones for Binah, and there's solar ones for Tiferet, and so forth. Hold on a second. Brendine says, Robin, I like that in that we become a community to support the work of each other. That is the idea I get from it. Yes, and the thing is, I for a long time liked the idea of the mastermind alliance, in which basically people sort of support each other and each other's visions. And this is a way of doing it sort of subconsciously and not necessarily even having to, completely interact with one another on any other way, but sort of on the spiritual plane, and yet we're still supporting one another, and we're still giving our energy to other people. And of course, if we want to consciously connect and make conscious mastermind alliances, then we can also do that as well. Juan says that he agrees, that he enjoys the idea of having a community battery in which each of us can tap into for needs for our own spiritual workings as well as more global ones. Frederick says, I felt the connection with priests, priestesses, adepts, etc. through time. Really good. Yeah, and the thing is, it's been going on for several years now, so there are a lot of, there's sort of a built-up energy in it as well, and also the fact that it also taps into this sort of universal archetype of this time, and so you are connecting with the entire body of all people who have, it's as much a Christian thing as anything else. This is the time of, that we celebrate Christ's birth, so that's a part of the battery as well, and Mithras as well. And all of that energy is collectively a part of this thing. So what you're doing is you're basically, as you're listening to the recording and sending your various energies up into it with the different tones, you're basically creating a channel so that when you listen to those tones elsewhere, you're going to automatically start vibrating with that energy that's been programmed in, and so it has an internal component as well. Robin says, especially community, as Jason mentions, without any religious or other attachments, just a magical community. Yeah, and just a community of people sharing energy for the sake of helping each other, even outside of anything occult or mysterious about it, just sort of joining together to say, yeah, I support you in whatever it is that you want to create in the world, as long as it's nice. Frederick says, my paranoid self is a bit afraid of creating a leech. Well, and the thing is that, throughout the recording, I intentionally state, for everything that you're putting in, 100-fold it's coming back to you, so that there's no sense of you giving more than you're getting. In fact, you're getting immensely more than you're giving, and that's the way that I would want it to be. And in fact, there's no reason for it not to be that way, because we're talking about a bunch of things combining together, and when they combine together, they can become greater than the sum of their parts, and so we can, in fact, amplify things without there having to be more put in than comes out. It's not like a pyramid scheme of energy or something like that. Juan says, with time and practice, you'll let go of that fear. Kevin says, it seems to when you tap into the community, it increases my own belief in what I'm doing. Thank you for the experience. TV says, JN, do you mean the Napoleon Hill Mastermind Alliance? That's exactly what I'm talking about, TV. I think that's where the term was coined from. I think it's kind of had a life of its own beyond him. But people coming together and sort of saying, hey, what's your thing that you want to do? Yeah, I'll help you with that a little bit. This is the thing I want to do, and we'll help each other. Robin says, Frederick, that's the nice part about this recording. I felt okay withdrawing from the energy because I too had contributed to the energy. Sure, yeah, and the thing is, even if you drew more than your share out of it, it doesn't really matter, because there's not a limited quantity of energy there. Juan says, that is a lovely way of looking at all worldviews within NH, to see them as a needed collective, each an essential part of the whole. Robin says, agreed. And Danny says, a good point, and Kevin says, agreed. So now I have this thing that I made back when I recorded it, and I've shared a little tiny piece of it at one point, but I've never shown the whole thing. Excuse me, my nose is itchy. I almost have hesitated to share it because I don't really want to tell people that this is what it's supposed to look like, and I've suggested that people create art. And I believe, I know that there's at least one other person. Was it you, Danny, who put up some artwork related to the Sunchild? I know someone did, the first year that we did it. But so this is a painting that I made of the Sunchild several years ago, at least my sort of version of it, and it's not a great painting or anything like that, but sort of shows. And so this is kind of the headdress as I envisioned it. But again, I don't necessarily want you guys to feel like that's the way that it needs to be. But I thought I'd share that. And so, are you guys hearing me? Okay, because I keep getting that little message saying that the system is weird. I don't want to force you guys to think that that's the way it's supposed to look. And the next recording, I want to talk a little bit about how things progress in this series. And so this one is the most free form of all of them. The rest of them get a little bit more mythical, and they involve the rebirth of the earth in the springtime, and then they involve the marriage of the sun and the earth, which is the spring equinox, and that particularly is about us. Well, I'll just describe them all, and then I want to talk about the sort of personal mythical elements of these things, and then the one in the summertime deals with sort of caring for the garden, caring for the growth of the things that that the universe is manifesting, which is our role as people in a lot of ways, and our role as individuals within our own lives. And then the autumn one is about the harvest time and harvesting those things that we've created throughout the year. So on a personal level, what we're creating with the Sunchild is the energy, the initial impulse of what it is that we're going to be creating this year, what it is that we're going to be working on. And we don't necessarily have to be 100% clear on that, but that's actually the meditation that I'd like us to pursue today. And it's not going to be a super long or involved meditation, but what I want you guys to recognize is that what's happening right now is we are rebirthing. We are coming to the point of things renewing. The world is going to renew. At this moment in time, the world is, the natural world is all sort of faded away, dying off, and now things are starting to move towards rebirth. And so this is the time in which we hold on, as with the candle in the night sky, we hold on to the vision of what it is that we would like to create, and we hold a vigil with that, and we feed it, and we care for it through this time of darkness, and things will begin to grow again in the springtime. So as we reach the springtime, it's important for us to kind of make sure that we are planting the seeds that we are creating now in an effective way in our lives, so that we're taking the actions that are necessary in order to move things in the direction that we want them to go. So we're creating this battery right now, but it's important for us to kind of know what it is that we'd like to accomplish with that battery and start putting energy into that, and as the year progresses, put more and more energy into it and tend to it. And in the summertime, when we reach the summer solstice, that's the longest day of the year. It's the time in which we really are kind of experiencing the most energy, the most sort of forward momentum in our lives, and that's the time to really kind of make sure that we're on track for making things happen the way we want them in our lives. And then in the autumn time is the time to kind of reflect on what we've done for the year and reap the benefits of it, and make sure that we honor ourselves and we praise ourselves for those things that we've done well as taking a look at the things that we haven't done as effectively, and making sure that as we're preparing to create the new Sunchild for the year after, that we learn the lessons of what we could have done better in the previous year. Well, Danny mentions that it seems like the solstice would be a more appropriate day for New Year's, since it's the beginning of a new year. And Robin says it's a calendar thing versus a seasonal thing. I think Danny says, I suppose it is. And you're both right. But the place where we begin the year is it changes from culture to culture. It's actually, different people, January 1st in our calendar is the way that we organize things. Some people organize things so that the year ends at like the Halloween area, or have in the past. Some people have it so that the year ends at the spring equinox, because the spring equinox is really the rebirth of the year. So different people move the beginning and end to different places, and I agree that in a way this is a definite ending point and a definite beginning point within the energy. But it's important to also look at it just as a cycle, as a circular matter, and that it's something that it's not an ending point so much as it is the point in which the energy refreshes itself, and we can now start putting our energy in new directions. Things have completed. Everything that we were going to accomplish in the year 2013 has been done, essentially. Everyone's thinking about the next year. All the companies are doing their books. Everything is kind of complete, and now we're moving towards that new place. Kevin says, as far as I know, the Gregorian calendar was created before they had accurate instruments to figure out the true day of the solstice. TV says, please explain again, how does your approach to what needs to be done differ between winter solstice and spring equinox? Very cool. Thanks, Jason. Okay, so and this is really what we're going to meditate on today. Okay, because the winter solstice is, if we look at it from the perspective of a seasonal agrarian life, the winter solstice is not the time when we actually accomplish a whole lot. It's freezing cold outside. The ground is covered with frost. We're not going to plant our seeds at this time necessarily, although we might in a few weeks' time, depending on the environment that we're in. But for the most part, this is a time of planning, of preparation, of holding on to what we need to get done, and really kind of focusing on it in our inner world, and preparing for the actions that we're going to take as of the spring equinox. And of course, we're going to take some actions, but we're not going to sit from here till the spring equinox and do nothing. But basically, this is the time of beginnings, whereas the spring equinox is the time of doing, of making sure that things are moving forward. Does that make sense to you, TV? Juan says, that is absolutely wonderful. It seems like with each solstice, we have a chance to really look at our goal workings. Would you recommend that we do ritual work on the goal setting as well during this time, even if perhaps on the very day we do the solstice meditations? Robin says, before the Gregorian calendar, do people use the lunar cycles to mark time? Okay. Robin, this isn't, I don't really know. Yes, they did. I know that they did. But as I said, the different cultures do different things. And I don't want this to get into a big thing about the calendar. I'm not like an expert on calendrical studies or something. As to Juan's question, I actually think the 4 best times of the year to do goal working are these 4 that have to do with these markers. do your goal working. Refresh and renew and look at your goals at the winter solstice. Refresh and look at your goals at the spring equinox. Refresh and look at your goals at the summer solstice, and refresh and look at your goals at the autumn equinox. Those are the 4 best times to do it. There's a lot of universal energy being directed towards those concepts at that time. Obviously, each one has a slightly different feel to it. This one, like I said, is that sort of beginning, planting the psychic seed for things, whereas the autumn equinox is more about reaping and thinking about what you did right and wrong. So I mean, they'll have different color tones to them, but they're all excellent times to do it. But I also don't think that you should necessarily not take a look at your goals in between those times either. I think that looking at the direction that one's taking in one's life, and whether one is really doing the things that are bringing oneself towards what we want, is an excellent thing to do anytime, as much as possible. The more clear we are on what our intentions are, the more we're going to be able to accomplish, and the more we're going to be able to see when we're straying from what our intentions are. Okay. Robin says she's good. It's okay. No, I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone from being interested in this topic, because I think it is a fascinating topic. I just don't personally have the best answers in the world to that question. Danny thought calendrical studies was a funny word. Juan says thanks very much. Juan says, could you suggest a way to use the Sunchild and its energy in conjunction with goal workings, perhaps as a way to further enhance each goal or its want? Well, Juan, you have very presciently come upon exactly what I want to do in terms of a meditation today. So, with that being said, perhaps that's the direction that we should take things now. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of questions. How many of you have not listened to the Sunchild recording ever? The second question is, how many of you have not listened to the Sunchild recording this year? And the third question is, how many of you have never used my New Hermetics goal-setting stuff ever? It's okay if the answer is, negative in any of those. Okay, so I haven't heard from too many people on here. I'm not going to bother reading what people have said, but so I'm going to assume that those of you who have not said they haven't done it have done it. So if you haven't, because it seems like no one has said that they haven't utilized the recording, so I'm going to assume that everyone here has. Okay. So my question is, my last question is, how many of you have recently taken a look at your goals and could recall kind of what your present goals are? Okay. All right, so to begin with, I want everyone to go ahead and just close their eyes with me. Oops, sorry about that. And we're not going to worry about goals for the moment, but I want you to hold that as a seed thought in your mind. But so go ahead and close your eyes and take a deep breath in with me and let it out. And in, and out, and in, And as you breathe out, just let a wave of relaxation flow through your body. And continue allowing yourself to just relax. And flow inward with each breath. With every exhale, allowing yourself to become more present to the process of breathing, more present to the motions of your body, more present to the physicality of your body as you are in the room where you're sitting. I'd like you to move your awareness down through your body. Let your awareness settle into the area of your lower abdomen, your tummy, which is the center of balance in your body. And in this place, become very aware of this present moment now, not the future nor the past, just this time, right here, right now. And I'd like you to become aware of your body as a system of energy, feeling the sensations in your body, from the tips of your toes to the tips of your fingers to the top of your head. There's sensations and the flow of energy, flow of emotions. And I'd like you to allow any tension or anxiety or any emotion that's other than just relaxation and tranquility to just melt away. I'd like you to become aware of the globe of light above your head. Just let that light flow down into you. As the light meets with any tension or resistance, just allow the light to melt through it, allowing yourself to become very relaxed, very present, very aware of yourself. And I'd like you to become aware of a line of energy that's flowing upward into the sky to connect with the Sunchild. And this isn't a tether, but rather something that you can connect or disconnect as you wish to. But for now, I'd like you to allow that line of energy to flow. And as I said, the line is flowing more towards you than away from you. So that as you feel this line of energy, I'd like you to allow yourself to begin to feel energy flowing into you. Energy bringing you gifts. Energy making it possible for new things to happen in your life that have never happened before. And for those things that you've been working on for a long time to come to fruition. And as you're feeling this energy flowing into you, I'd like you to begin to think about your number one personal or spiritual goal, whatever's most important to you at this time. And I'd like you to see it as an image in front of you. I'd like you to allow the energy coming down from the Sunchild to flow into this image so that it becomes brighter and brighter. It becomes more and more clear to you the goal that you presently have as your most important goal. allow it to become more and more clear in your mind. And I'd like you to begin to see yourself, or rather to experience yourself in the first person, moving forward and accomplishing this goal. Whatever is most important for you, specifically accomplishing this one thing, and doing it better than you imagined that it might be. Experiencing it joyfully and sharing that joy, allowing that joy to flow up to the Sunchild, to energize the Sunchild for somebody else. And I'd like you to allow that image and that sensation and that experience that you've created to begin to compress and flow up the cord into the Sunchild. And as it flows up, I'd like you to see it flowing right into the Sunchild and causing a greater glow to flow through the Sunchild. And that glow comes back down the cord from the Sunchild right into you, filling you with just exactly the right energies, abilities, and states of consciousness that you need to be able to automatically accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. And I'd like you to feel your body becoming charged with the energy from the Sunchild, filling you with a magical ability to accomplish exactly what you need to accomplish. And you can know that as the days move forward and the power of the sun becomes brighter, stronger, and longer, your abilities, your powers, and your awareness will grow, because the energy of the Sunchild is not merely the energy that we have put into it, but the energy of the sun itself, the spiritual energy of the mythical sun, and the physical energy of the sun's radiation flowing through us in all its varying forms, from the light that shines on us to the energy and the food that we eat. And know that everything is moving towards a greater capacity to love and to share and to experience. And basking in this glow, I'd like you to begin to consider 2 to 4 more of your goals that are also important to you. I'd just like you to see them as images in front of your mind's eye, perhaps one in the middle, and some others off to the side. Just allow them to all be in your awareness. They don't need to be particularly detailed, but as you're forming these images in your mind, I'd like you to experience that light and power of the Sunchild, also infusing these goals, these intentions, with their power. I'd like you to briefly enter into and experience yourself accomplishing these things as well. One at a time. Knowing that the energy to accomplish these things is being charged into the universal consciousness, and allow those images and experiences to flow up along the tether between you and the Sunchild. And experience that glow radiating energy back into you. Flowing through you, knowing that you have the power and the capacity to accomplish everything that you need to accomplish. And experience that growing power in your body, knowing that you have the capacity, the ability, and the direction to move in exactly the ways you need to into this next year. You may experience the tether between you and the Sunchild disconnecting for the moment, or you may leave it connected for now and it will naturally fade away as your attention moves in other directions. But the energy and the power are still there, and your ability to connect with the Sunchild is available to you at any time that you need or want it. But for now, I'd like you to begin to reintegrate more fully in this room where you are sitting. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And let me know that you're back by typing something into the chat area. So, that was a very simple method of working with the Sunchild, very similar to the New Hermetics manifesting synchronicity exercise in a lot of ways, though not exactly the same. And that's something that you can do anytime. It's not something that's restricted to just this moment, although certainly this was a good moment to do it. And now, having done that, I want to go back to TV's question, and I guess Robin's question a little bit too, the difference between that and the spring equinox meditation. And so in a few months, when you get to the spring equinox, there's a new dynamic added, which is the energy of the earth, represented by the female counterpart of the Sunchild. Although the Sunchild is androgynous at this point, it becomes more male at the spring equinox, and the his female counterpart is the earth itself. And so at that point, the energies right now, we just drew energy. We added it. We sent our intention and drew energy from the Sunchild. But at the spring equinox, there's another counterpart who is the actual action, the making things happen on the physical plane. And so that's the major difference, is that there's a more material component as we reach the equinox. I'm going to let you guys become a little more fully alert. And then I want to open up to some questions before we part. I know you guys have already been asking some questions throughout, but I want to give you the opportunity to ask any more. Everyone's saying that they really enjoyed it. I'm glad you did. Juan says he's still in awe and wants to hug me. Perhaps at some point this year you'll be able to do that, Juan. So, comments and questions about the meditation, and comments or questions about the Sunchild recording itself. Now, the thing about the Sunchild recording is that it's got a somewhat linear quality to it, in that you're creating something, and it might feel strange to do it again, but I don't think that there's any problem in that. So, if you're thinking about listening to it again because you want to try and get more out of it or something like that, don't feel odd in that you're sort of recreating it again, because it's an eternal thing as well as something that you're creating in a time space sense. So it's perfectly fine to recreate it or to re-energize it at any time that you want to. Brendine says, visual on the primary goal feels very energized to actually make that one that just challenges me repeatedly. Thank you. Brendusa says, can we create a Sunchild for someone else and send it to them? Well, I mean, my vision of the Sunchild is not so much that it's something that's just for you, an individual thing, but rather that it's a communal thing that everyone's kind of sharing in the Sunchild, even if it looks different. So, I mean, my recommendation would be to just simply, if you know they're not going to do the Sunchild meditation, just simply add their energy to it in a, not in a vampiric way, but just rather, connect, basically say, Sunchild, here's the person who needs some of your energy, and put it there. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. As long as you're not wanting to have the Sunchild harm the person, there's nothing, negative about giving some of the energy to someone else too. Juan says, that was perfect, and I fully understand its purpose and its proper use. Thank you so very much. Excellent. Now, the other thing that I want to mention, and this is along the lines of that vigil and the candle and so forth, one of the things that at the time that I created these that was also kind of being instructed was that there might be a time in the future in which people might observe these things in a ritualized fashion at those seasonal times and actually perform kind of group rituals in those regards. So I do believe that I have the rudiments of those things written down somewhere. So, I mean, if people, I know some of you are together in Las Vegas, so if you guys want to do something like that, that's also a possibility of a way that you can utilize this same stuff in a slightly different context. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons to get together as a group would be to kind of more formally commune with the energies together. Frederick says, can an egregore like this get an intelligence of itself, or is this a weird question? I think that inherently it does, but I don't think that it, if we were starting to utilize the Sunchild in a like a mantic way, like asking questions, like using it for divination, that would more sort of activate that sort of personality within it. The way that it's sort of coming together at this point, I don't see it as having that much persona, but I mean, I'm not in control of it entirely, so you can explore that possibility. Brandusa says, can a Sunchild energy sent can cure cancer?